Welcome to the latest episode of the podcast that wouldn't die. I'm your host, Kevin. With me, as always, is Aaron.
Hey.
This week, we're doing the horror classic, The Howling, starring Dee Wallace and Slim Pickens and Patrick McNee, and it's a whole star cast.
Mr. Dee Wallace.
Mr. Dee Wallace, right. She soon after became Dee Wallace Stone. For quite a while there, because she married Chris Stone, I think was his name.
Whatever. He kind of reminded me of the dude from Halloween Season of the Witch.
Right. Well, they both have the crazy brush mustache. Oh yeah, that was the style.
Blondes with facial hair. Just say no. Only brunettes. Only brunettes.
It was big between 77 and 82. That was the look. There you go. Now it's only firefighters and porn stars. So there you go.
Oh, my God, yes.
So it's an all-star cast is what we're trying to say. Go to our page on Facebook at the podcast that wouldn't die. Go to our page on Twitter at TW Podcast. I think I messed it up. What is it? At T
you
Podcast
don't even know
TW
where you are. What's happening?
Something's going on. Go ahead and follow us on both places because I put different things on different sites. So you got to do both, for God's sakes. Go to and share, subscribe us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, etc., etc. And you can email us at thepodcastthatwouldn'tdie@gmail. Now, Aaron, you also have a Twitter account.
The
correct?
Cult of Aaron.
The lovely Cult of Aaron. So check that good stuff out as well. Now, Aaron, give us the 30-second synopsis of The Howling.
Werewolves like porn. They are also trying to get in touch with their hippier side. So here's the story. There's a serial killer loose in Los Angeles. And an undercover TV reporter. Remember when reporters used to do investigative journalism? And I don't mean Geraldo Rivera with Al Capone's vault. I mean when they tried to undercover stuff and do things like that. So Dee Wallace is a plucky reporter who puts herself in ridiculous danger to track down the serial killer. And anyway, she blacks out. She don't know what's going on. So she has no memory of her assault in the porno hut, and I'll tell you a story about one of those porno huts one time.
Don't tell us that,
but not right now. So anyway, serial killer gets killed. She's having PTSD. It is recommended that she goes off to the Nepenthe or whatever one of these communes up in Big Sur to get where rich people get in touch with their fragile feelings. She goes up there. Guess what? It's a commune for frickin' werewolves.
That's a bad scene. Bad scene.
It's a bad scene. And she got a bad husband because he joined right in. My wife won't have sex with me for 2 weeks. So, boom, I'm already cheating. He got his just rewards. Anyway, she finally realized, hey, everyone's a freaking werewolf, and eventually she locks them in a barn, lights them all on fire, and then to show the world that werewolves are real, she turns into a werewolf on local TV and blows her brains out. The end.
That's a pretty good synopsis there.
I think you covered all the bases.
You covered all the bases. Yeah. Dee Wallace, she plays Karen White, and she's married to, what's his name? Bill Neal, who was actually her fiance at the time in real life, Chris Stone. And she kept her name, though. That's kind of a bone of contention, wouldn't you say? Right?
Interesting. Do you think starring in this movie sealed the deal? She wasn't sure, but after they did this delightful romp, they decided, yeah, it's gold, baby. I'm gonna pin you down.
We're gonna talk about this in behind the scenes. I have all sorts of stuff to say about this. This is interesting.
Good,
stuff.
Because I literally have half a page of notes.
Good stuff.
Which is not good. Not good.
Before we jump on in, okay, thumbs up, thumbs down, half a thumb. What do you give it?
It is not as good as Blackula. That is for sure.
Well, what is? You know what I'm saying? There's only we can't compare it to Citizen Kane. You know what I'm saying?
It seems to me I would have enjoyed it more. When did this come out? 82 or something? Because it feels like it's an 80s film.
1981.
All right. Back when they weren't really sure how to make movies. So I'm going to give this a sideways. I'm going to give it a maybe.
Give it a maybe.
Not terrible. I will probably, like, if I'm flipping the dial, I'm like, oh, the Howling's on. I'm going to give it a hard pass.
Oh, no.
No am I challenged to watch Howling 2, Howling 3,
No.
Howling 4, Howling 5.
No, do not. Okay. We'll get into all that later in the game, but believe me when I say, if you hated the Howling, I'm calling it Howling. If you hated the Howling, you don't want to see any of the sequels. And frankly, if you loved the Howling, you don't want to see any of the sequels. Take my word for it.
I mean, the story is a little shaky.
Well, we'll talk about it because it's based on a book. It was based on a book, and we'll talk about. See,
did you read the book, Kevin? Did you read the book?
Did not read the book, but I do know what the book's about, and I know how it's different. But we'll hit that.
Do you know
later.
The Hunger is based on a book?
Okay.
Did that make it better in your eyes?
It did not. It made it. It probably made it worse.
I have a selection on Audible this month. I think I'm going to listen to the Hunger. I'm curious about that.
But not the Howling or the Hallowing, as I call it.
Oh my God, no! I will tell you. No. I'm not. I have no comment whatsoever. No. The answer is no. I'm not intrigued. This is not like you see The Shining and you go, "Oh, there's a book." It's like you see The Howling, you're like, "This is based on a book?"
Interesting.
More question mark than exclamation point.
There you go. So Karen White is, like you said, she's an investigative reporter, and she somehow has gotten.
Did you say her name is Carrie White?
Carrie White? No, Karen.
Oh, okay. Too bad.
Carrie, a different movie. Somehow she's gotten into contact with this serial killer, right? And he's willing to meet with her. It's the craziest thing.
See, I was a little confused because he's a serial killer, but wasn't he stalking her? Isn't that the point with him licking his lips and all that? Hasn't he been calling the station?
It's something like that. He's killed a bunch of people. His name is Eddie Quist, they eventually find out. And he has murdered a bunch of people across the Southland. But she's on TV all the time. So he's become infatuated with her and wants to meet her.
Like Jillian Barbary, like back when she was on Good Day LA, something like that.
It's exactly
that kind of a character.
She is. She is exactly like Jillian Barbary. Anywho, so the police put like a wire on her, and the news is all ready to go live when she finally meets this guy, and I guess the cops are going to swoop in. But yeah, it's like meet me in a peep show. At the local porn hut. And so she goes in there and he comes in behind her. We don't really see his face. He's got a big old like bushy Chewbacca hairstyle is all we can see in the dark.
Right.
And the cops arrive and the rookie literally comes out guns a-blazing and just shoots through the door of the peep show. Miraculously,
which is insane.
It's totally insane.
Because there's a woman screaming from the other side.
Right. They hear the scream. They come running in. He just comes out guns a-blazing like Yosemite Sam and shoots blindly into the booth. Luckily, at this point, Karen had fallen to the ground, but he'd killed, again, miraculously, Eddie Quist, the serial killer. So problem solved. Or did he? Questions. So, she, like you said, she's having PTSD. So she goes and talks to this therapist, new age psychologist, played by Patrick McNee. His name is Dr. George Wagner. And he's a guy who always appears on their network talking about like the id and things like that and primal urges. He was
the Dr. Phil of this kind of 70s hangover film. He's the Dr. Phil of the time.
So because she has total PTSD and cannot remember the face of the killer and she doesn't know what happened, all we saw him do was kind of rub her shoulders a little bit.
Right.
Basically.
And lick his lips. And
lick his lips. Yes.
Now her creepy blonde husband it can't get no satisfaction because she just keeps seeing the serial killer licking his lips every time she sees her husband, I guess, licking his lips.
That's all I see after seeing this movie. It's a horror show. So yeah, but hey, speaking as a husband, I thought up until the point that he cheats on her with the crazy gypsy woman, he was surprisingly sensitive to her plight. I thought she was like, "Oh, I'm just not feeling
it."
Until he wasn't. That exactly. She was like screaming when he starts kissing her. So he's like, "Okay, no problem." He says something along the lines of, "We'll be okay. We'll get through this." Something along those lines.
Yeah,
but yeah,
your crazy, wife. Who basically, get your thrills from skydiving. Why you got to put yourself in danger and not tell people what's going on? He actually could be a little bit more annoyed with her, quite frankly.
He was a little concerned because they're like earlier in the movie when she's going undercover or whatever it was. The cops are like, the microphone only works some of the time. That's weird. We seem to have lost the signal.
With a serial killer.
Yes.
I like how the police were all on board on all of this.
Yeah. Good times.
Good old LAPD. Hasn't really changed since LA Confidential, has it?
Right. Pretty much. So Dr. Wagner says, come on up. I've got this retreat up the coast where you'll be able to relax. We'll do group therapy sessions. It'll be great. No problem. So they agree to do that. Meanwhile, their friends, Chris and Terry, who work at the news station, are still kind of investigating the background of this serial killer. They've managed to find the serial killer's place, and it's full of like weird Texas Chainsaw imagery with like bones hanging on the ceiling.
Old rib bones, steak bones. I could have been saving like old scraps from my dinner table and set up shop somewhere in like Venice Beach. Apparently, just need some fish line, a bead, and a T-bone steak bone.
That's all you need. Also, this guy is like a master artist because there's a million pictures of kind of his face, but looking all furry and creepy.
Come on, master artist.
Oh, okay.
These are like Disneyland caricatures. Let's settle ourselves down. Let's not get above it.
Okay, he's no Picasso, but it was clearly better than just the scribblings of a madman. That's all I'm trying to say.
Right.
So you see, like, okay, so there's something going on here with these pictures. They're all kind of furry critter people. But there's also, like, a beautiful drawing of, like, the coastline, which will come in later as an important thing.
I say it was a quality of, like, a good high school senior.
How dare you? How dare you?
How dare you?
So they, Karen and her husband Bill, go up the coast, and they're doing some kind of a bonfire cookout thing where they meet all the strange.
Kumbaya, my lord, kumbaya.
Yes. And
except it's like crazy country western.
It's totally country western stuff. There's a big slab of meat. Bill, on more than one occasion, says, "Hey, I'm a vegetarian. Hey, you want some of these ribs? Sorry, I'm a vegetarian." Oh, okay.
Because it's an all meat. The salad is made out of meat.
Yeah.
The cake is made out of meat.
Yes. And we meet crazy old John Carradine is one of the people. John Carradine, you might remember, he was in some horror movies back in the 50s. But he's more famously the patriarch of the Carradine family, Keith, Robert, and most importantly, David Carradine. So there you go.
But crazy Carradine is the correct term.
That is correct. He's an old crazy dude who's lamenting. He's like, my teeth don't work. And he literally tries to throw himself into the bonfire. No, I can't live like this anymore. I can't live like this.
Kevin, why did you ever give up the theater?
I am basically Rich Little in here. It's all the impressions. There you go.
Oh, yeah. We're really going to get the young people with our podcast, with our Rich Little references.
They appreciate those. At this point, any normal couple would have been like, honey, do you have your car keys? We're getting the hell out of here. But, of course, they don't do that. They start talking to the locals. They're all very friendly. There's a crazy old gypsy woman there who's
These aren't
passing out
locals.
punch.
These are all the people in the commune, right?
Yes. Yeah, you're absolutely right. We don't know where they came from, but they all are part of this colony. Most of them seem kind of normal, but you're right. A few of them have like cowboy hats and things like that, which whatever that means.
Whatever.
But there's also a couple of weird like gypsy. I keep calling them gypsy people. They're not really gypsy people, but they're like
dark-haired, wild eyes.
Yes, dark hair, wild eyes, wearing like bones as jewelry.
Yeah,
that's a
gypsy.
big thing. I mean, I don't want to offend any gypsies who might be listening, but that's kind of what they were going for.
Yeah, I mean, you can't have a werewolf movie without a gypsy.
You can't. It's common knowledge.
They're called the Roma. Is gypsy angry?
Yes.
Is that racist?
That is correct. The Romani is what they're called of Eastern Europe. But again, that's not what these people are. Anywho, she's passing out punch. And Bill goes up because he's looking for Karen. He takes a glass of punch and says, "Hey, have you seen my wife?" And the gypsy woman turns to him and says, "Why? Why do you want to find your wife?" And he's just like, okay.
All right.
Excuse me.
Scary vagina lady. I'm going to go away now.
Who only has one crazy like leather wraparound outfit that she wears every day. So unless she has multiple leather wraparound outfits, or if it's just this one, it's hard to say.
It's possible, I wear black leggings like almost every day. So some might assume I have one pair and I'm just filthy. But no, I have several pairs.
So you say. I mean, am I supposed to take you at your word or what?
I'll post pictures of all my leggings on the Twitter.
Please don't. So that night, Bill and Karen are settling into bed, but Karen can't sleep because of the sounds that she's hearing echoing around the countryside. Howling, howling, howling all night long. Howling, howling.
See, now that wouldn't scare me. I would have found that fascinating. I would have woken up my husband and go, "Let's go peek out the window. I want to see the wolves. I want to see the coyotes or whatever the hell's out there." My first impulse would not be scared. I might be annoyed because it's so loud. But my first impulse is look out the window and let me go see what these critters are. Am I right or am I wrong?
I think you're wrong.
No.
I think I'm boarding up the windows and...
Assuming it's a zombie apocalypse.
Pretty much. Okay, I'm going to talk to you about how I thought I saw a zombie apocalypse the other day. I was jogging at the park yesterday.
Wait, first of all, you were jogging?
Yes. I've been doing that lately. It's my New Year's resolution.
To prepare for the zombie apocalypse.
You better believe it. You better believe it. And I saw 30, 40 people like staggering along, and I'm like, what is going on? Hopefully this is not the zombie apocalypse. It was not. They were all playing Pokemon Go.
Oh, because they were staggering and holding their phones.
Yes, that is exactly correct. So
next time you see that, you really need to consider taking a video of that.
Well, let me ask you this.
Pokemon Go, ? Zombie apocalypse, ?
Which is the preferable reality, Which is scarier? An army of Pokemon Go people or an army of zombies? I'll leave that up to you.
I didn't know people were still playing goddamn
I didn't know either.
There were times when I see large clusters of people all kind of in a tight circle at like intersection corners. And I always assume, because it's, where I live, that it's some kind of a prayer circle. Then I see the phones or my child just says, "It's a Pokemon Go gym," or blah, blah, or something else.
So that's what it is. So anywho, moving on. By day, Karen goes to these group therapy meetings where she still is having trouble remembering what happened. By night, she's walking around bothered by the sound of the howling, and she finds like cows are like eviscerated. She's walking like, oh my God.
Why wouldn't you assume it was the Chupacabra then?
Because the movie's not called... Howling? I don't know.
I would have assumed, first of all, cow mutilations, it's got to be Chupacabra or aliens.
It's pretty standard. It's pretty standard.
My mind doesn't say werewolf. I assume it's an alien probing going on.
We can only hope. Meanwhile, back in L.A., Terry and Chris are visiting the local occult bookstore, where Dick Miller magically appears as the guy running the store. He promptly tells them about the history of werewolves and how they don't really need full moons, by the way. That's all Hollywood hooey.
And how does he know so much?
Because he runs an occult bookstore. That's how he does it. He says they can turn whenever they pretty much damn well please. That's how they roll. And that's why he considers them more shapeshifters, is what he calls them, than werewolves for some reason. And coincidentally, someone tried to buy a bunch, or ordered, I should say, a bunch of silver bullets for a 30-06 hunting rifle, but then never picked them up. So I just have them here.
I shot a 30-06 once, you know.
It's a serious rifle, as far as I know.
It scared me. It's loud.
Guns are noisy. That's why I live in Orange County. Orange County. There are no guns here, so that's how we roll.
I'm sure you're right, because no one has seen a gun in Anaheim.
We don't. You're right. It depends what part of Orange County you're in. There you have it.
Those conservatives are armed to the teeth. Don't even give me your sass.
Oh Lord. So that's true. Anywho, so Chris is while Karen's playing tennis, she meets the kindly local sheriff. Chris goes hunting with the boys. Again, not a meat eater. He manages to kill like a I don't know, rabbit. Some kind of rabbit with his
rabbit the size of a medium dog. I remember him carrying this thing. He's practically dragging it through the countryside. I'm not a meat eater, but yeah, sure, I'll go hunting and throw it away in the trash can.
Basically, is what he says.
This?
It's very upsetting. So he's walking home. He meets the grizzly hunchback TC, who says, "Hey, my sister will clean and dress that bunny rabbit for you. Go on in. I ain't no trouble at all." So he's like...
So why did he say, "Oh, I'm a vegetarian"?
This is a good question. But he's also concerned because he knows that TC's sister is the gypsy woman, Marcia. Who
is clearly in heat.
She is throwing the goods at him. She's been throwing the goods at him since day one.
Right.
Against his better judgment, he rolls on in there. She says, "Oh, I'll take care of this for you later," and tries to roll up on him and gives him a kiss. He kisses her, but then he pushes her away and promptly leaves.
He practically throws her across the room. I think it was almost like an assault.
It was something.
It was such an overreaction.
Right. He could have just said, "No thanks, honey."
He knew what she was doing. He could have stopped it.
Absolutely. That you do not go to the crazy gypsy woman's house to get your rabbit cleaned. That sounds kind of like a euphemism.
That's what we're going to call it now. You're getting your rabbit cleaned.
Oh, sweet Jesus. So he promptly runs home guilty. And on the way, he's attacked by a wolf. So Dr. Wagner...
Some might say it's a she-wolf.
A she-wolf. Dr. Wagner gives him a tetanus shot, I guess, and says,
because that's all you need. Because they didn't have rabies in the 80s.
That is true. Maybe it was a rabies shot. I don't know what it was. For God's sakes, it could have been a vitamin B injection for all I know. So that night, now Karen's feeling a little amorous, and she's like, "Hey, big guy, let's do this." And he's
let's
like,
do
"Hey."
it.
He says, "Hey, honey, I'm not up to it. Maybe it's the shot. Maybe it's the wolf attack that I just put up with." Karen, I noticed, was not nearly so sensitive to his issues at this stage of the game. She's just like, "We just can never get on the same page." Rolls over.
You selfish son of a bitch!
Don't you know? When I gotta have it, I gotta have it. Anyway.
Do your husbandly duty. It's time to clean the rabbit.
She might as well have said, "If you don't handle this, I'll find someone who will."
That's right.
So that night...
Old Mr. Carradine, baby.
I'll get... Beggars
It's
can't be
been a long
choosers.
time since he's had a rabbit cleaned.
Pretty much. Good Lord. He's a very gentle lover, is what they say.
Oh, I'm going to have bad dreams again.
Pretty much. So that night they go to sleep. He gets up, her husband now, she's asleep. He gets up and wanders into the woods, and there's a bonfire in the woods, and there's crazy gypsy woman waiting for him. And without a word to say,
boom, it's on like Genghis Khan.
You better believe it. No, there's no, do you have a bottle of wine? Light some candles? No, they get right to it. Naked, full frontal, boom, and handle their biz. Now, as they do it, what's going down? They both start wolfing out. They both get fangs. They both get fur all over their body. He starts literally drooling. There's a scene where drool is just pouring out of his mouth. It was a rough scene.
Ectoplasmic drool. It was so gelatinous and vomified. It was disgusting.
It was highly erotic. Right before, right. Oh Lord! Then there's like a wide shot, which is clearly a cartoon of them totally being like werewolves doing it next to the bonfire. So not their finest CGI work. I'm sorry.
And meanwhile, obviously, everyone in the universe except for Ms. Wallace are watching it because you hear everybody howling all over.
Howling. So she's kind of pissed off at her husband now because he didn't come home that night, which is never a slick move. And when he does,
it's never a good thing when you go to bed and your husband's next to you. You wake up in the middle of the night, he's not there, and in the morning, still not there.
And not in the house.
Not in the house.
Not in the house, and still not dressed.
And still not dressed, and you know which witchy woman's been after him.
That's correct. He comes in and has now got scratches all over his back. And he's like, this is from where the wolf attacked me the other night. And she's like, that wasn't there.
Exactly.
You got
bullshit.
You got that from Gypsy Woman. And he gets mad and smacks her.
Yeah.
Gives her a smack.
He went from Mr. Sensitive to Mr. A-Hole. Not only is he gaslighting her, but he's also raising a hand to her.
He's basically Ike Turner at this stage of the game.
He's Ike Turner. I would have spider monkeyed his freaking ass. I would have clawed out his eyes. Oh, yeah!
It was a sad situation. Karen calls her friend Terry to come up.
Yeah, exactly. Pick me up. I'm leaving this a-hole at the commune.
But that's not what happens. Terry's going to come up and hang out at the colony for a few days. But there's a lot while Karen's doing her group therapy. Terry is roaming around the countryside, taking pictures of things. And she notices the coastline strangely matches that drawing that she took from the serial killer's room. So she's like, oh no, I need to go tell Karen about this. There's a connection with the serial killer in this place. So she's wandering along. She comes upon a shack, basically, and says, I'm just going to go on in. I think this is somebody's house. That's cool. I'm still just going to go on it. Knock, knock, knock. No one's here. I'm going in. I'm breaking and entering. I'm trespassing. This is clearly somebody's house. So she's wandering around and she stumbles into one of the bedrooms. And of course, it strangely matches that same bedroom that she saw back in LA. It's got the bones hanging from the fishing line. It's got the weird pictures, the hand-drawn pictures all over the place.
Now, question.
Yes.
Did you assume that this was the serial killer's room or that all these freaks' rooms look like this?
I took it to mean that this was the same killer's room. And I think later it is revealed he's still using it. You understand what I'm saying?
I was not quick on the uptake because I assumed is part of the therapy all these freaks just sit around and draw these same pictures?
Well, because earlier in the movie, Terry and Chris wanted to examine the body of the serial killer at the morgue, and the body was missing.
Mysterious.
Bum, bum, bum. So Terry's like, what the hell is going on? Now she's getting attacked by the werewolf. There's a werewolf, and this is the first time you see the werewolf, right? Or is that right? You see like the hands. You see the hand, the wolf hands reaching at her, chasing at her. She manages to fend off the werewolf with like a hatchet that just happens to be there, chops off the werewolf's arm, and escapes. She runs back to Dr. Wagner's office because, again, they all consider Dr. Wagner kind of their, if not friend, professional colleague.
Right.
Like they know him. They've worked with him at the news station. So they're in. Terry promptly calls Chris, her boyfriend, husband, whatever he is, and starts telling him the story. Chris says, look, I'll be there as soon as I can. Look through the filing cabinet and pull up Quist to see if there's some connection with Eddie Quist, the serial killer. Opening the filing cabinet, we see, here's the file for Eddie Quist. Here's also the file for T.C. Quist, the grizzly hunchback, and Marcia Quist, the gypsy woman. So it's a whole, oh my God, what's this? And then you see the werewolf hand grab the files out of her hand. And now we see full frontal werewolf face to face with her. And I gotta say, I thought it looked pretty damn creepy. I thought it looked pretty damn good. What are your I'm getting the size.
You mean the blob things that pulsated? Is that what you're talking about?
No, I'm talking
forehead blue.
I'm just talking about when you see the wolf, just the wolf homie.
Okay, let me just say,
yes,
not impressed. And quite frankly, while you wait 25 minutes for them to transform, it never occurs to anyone to just leave.
Well, I'm looking at this. I'm not sure that Karen knows she knows that there's Howling, and she knows people are kind of weird, and she knows her husband's a douchebag.
Yeah.
But I don't think she knows that there's like werewolves and stuff going on. It's really Chris and Terry who are doing all this legwork. And then Terry is putting the pieces together. And before she can tell Karen, she's telling Chris, her husband, on the phone.
Right.
The wolf man appears and fights her in the office.
Quite frankly, the full wolves, to me, look like giant rabbits.
I think you're out of your GD mind. Maybe I'm too charitable because it's 1981.
Except
it's all
at
practical
the end,
effects.
When Dee Wallace becomes it, then it literally looked a cross between. It looked like an Ewok.
Yeah, it did. That is true. I will give you that.
She turned into a freaking Ewok.
This is true. So Terry is fighting off the wolf. She's shining him with the big shiny light that's in the medical office right before the werewolf literally picks her up off the ground by her throat. Yeah. And then
peace to her.
Peace to her. So Chris is now in L.A., still on the phone, still on the extension going, I guess I'm driving up to Big Sur right about now.
No one thinks about calling the Popo.
No, I got to handle this myself. Just like the guy in Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, I got to handle this myself.
That's right. What can the police do anyway?
What can the police? He happens to have a 30-06 rifle. I don't know how. He goes to Dick Miller's occult shop, throws him a couple bills, grabs the silver bullets, and says, hey, bill me. Jumps in his Mazda RX-7, stops to fill up gas. There was a hilarious scene where he's honking the horn at this dude at the pump ahead of him. And the guy turns around and goes, hey, guy, not all of us can afford a Mazda.
Mazda? What are you, like a millionaire?
It was the fun. He's all like, this is an emergency. Okay, so Terry's dead. Karen somehow walks over to the medical office. And then, of course, there is the dead body of Terry. Oh, my God, Terry, what happened? And then there appears Eddie Quist. He's alive.
Oh, yeah. This is the part I got confused with. I was thinking this is the scene you were talking about. This scene is not awesome.
He's normal, but he's got like a bullet hole in his forehead.
And he's like purple.
Yeah, he looks effed up. And he literally says, let me give you a piece of my mind. And then he promptly reaches into his bullet hole in his skull and pulls out the
He's
bullet.
still alive. Why would he
Yes.
not need his brain?
Well, he throws the bullet at her. I don't think he throws
Oh.
it. He was trying to be funny. Is what
Oh,
it was.
yeah. He's a card.
He's a card. So then he changes right in front of her. And this is what you're talking about, where it's a lot of bubbling.
Oh,
like,
it was retardo. It was like, what came first, this or American Werewolf in London?
Same year. And we're going to talk about that.
Okay, well, let's just
Behind
say
the scenes.
Werewolf in London did a better job. This thing just went. It was so slow and long, and I don't know why he would need to have a balloon in his head. I hear your moans of enragement coming through
These are my
phone
moans of enragement. Absolutely.
but it just and we got to wait 20 minutes for everybody to transform. I still don't understand why they have like balloons in their forehead that pulsate. What the hell was that supposed
That's all
to be?
part of the transformation process.
Get out of here.
He's changing into a werewolf in front of her, and this is where you see the full transformation. Luckily, Karen reaches behind her, and on a random shelf in the doctor's office, there is a jar of hydrochloric acid. Why would there be?
Because don't all, I don't know, psychiatrists have just jars of acid? You don't know.
Now, assuming doctors need jars of hydrochloric acid, let's just waive that part of it. Would they just leave it out next to the telephone?
With just
I don't know.
a little stopper. It's like in a decanter is what it is.
So she picks it up and splashes the werewolf with it in the face and runs off.
Yeah,
she escapes.
She escapes, but apparently the acid wasn't quite strong enough.
So she runs to the barn where there's evidently like a town meeting, and that's when she realizes, hey, everybody's a werewolf. She sees Dr. Wagner. She runs over. Oh, doctor, I'm so glad you're here. And he's like, no, Karen, no, and kind of pushes her away. And that's when they all realize basically what's been happening. As you know, for hundreds of years, werewolves just kind of were running wild in the countryside, attacking people, eating whatever they wanted. Dr. Wagner is really a new age psychologist or therapist who's like, no, we can't live like that anymore. We have to live civilized.
We're not savages.
We are raising our own cattle, and we'll just, kill the cattle, and we'll live like that. Sadly, people are not too happy about this plan, led by Marcia, the gypsy woman, who says, no, I'm in charge now, Doc. We're putting an end to this. Piss off. We're gonna kill old Karen over there. She's gonna be our next meal.
But they don't really eat them.
Well, they do kind of eat them. They kind of chew them up a little bit. I guess they don't like.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, they just kind of bite them and stuff. But then, if you bite them and don't kill them, then they become more werewolves.
Well, that's why John Carradine was flipping out at the barbecue, because he was like, I don't want to live like a person that eats his ribs with barbecue sauce at a barbecue. I want to be able to go out and hunt and do those sorts of things. So meanwhile, Chris shows up to the doctor's office, because that's where Terry called him, and sees Terry's body again. And Eddie Quist pops up, only now his face is all half melted.
He's like ribcage exposed, and his personality has not improved. He's still, he is messed, but he's not mortally wounded, because again, we've established the only way to kill them is with silver bullets. But if you put him in a bathtub of HCl, eventually he would melt.
Eventually?
Or is it like death becomes you and you're in 1,000 little pieces but still alive in each little piece?
This is a good question. So Eddie is basically mocking Chris because he sees he's got his rifle. He's like, okay, whatever. Do your worst. And of course, Chris just blasts him because he's got the silver bullets, and that's the end of old Eddie. He bites the dust.
Chris, how many bullets do you think a 30-06 holds?
I honestly don't know, although he grabbed, I swear there was like 20 or 30 silver bullets in that little case. Wouldn't you say? There was a bunch.
I would say.
But you're right. I don't know how many you can load into it. It's a bolt-action rifle, but I don't know if it had like a magazine. I'm not a hunter. What do I know about this?
There was no magazine.
So Chris goes to the barn, rescues Karen. And again, people are kind of talking trash, whatever. He promptly blasts, because basically Chris is now Rambo at this stage of the game. He shoots TC, and then, oh, come on, TC, get up, quit fooling around. And he's like, no, I got silver bullets. And they're like, ooh, oh my goodness. Now that you mention it, Dr. Wagner promptly steps up, keeps approaching Chris. Chris has figured out Dr. Wagner's obviously not who he claims to be. He shoots Dr. Wagner, who promptly goes, oh, thank God, and then drops dead. They force the rest of the werewolf people into the barn. And in a problem of continuity, he takes his rifle and shoves it through the slots to basically barricade the door so they can't escape from the barn, right?
Okay.
He pours gasoline, lights the barn on fire. So they're burning all the werewolves that are in the barn. However, Chris still has the rifle. Later in the movie, we see him still holding the rifle 2 minutes later. So what the hell? How is he keeping the werewolves trapped in the barn? No one knows. This is one of those questions that will never be answered. Karen and Chris are driving away. They see the sheriff. But we see he's kind of wolfed out too. Slim Pickens, he's shooting at him. Chris basically does a Mel Gibson barrel roll and shoots that guy. Blam, blam. That's the end of the sheriff. But now there are more werewolves running around, including one got in the back of the car that they were trying to escape in. They shoot that werewolf. And who is that werewolf? Her husband.
That's what he gets. And it holds... Yeah, I'm trying to tell you how many bullets it is. 1 to 8.
Well, I mean, he probably shoots 8 times. He doesn't reload as far as
because he never reloads. You should have had him line up. Maybe just go straight through.
Pretty much. Would you mind lining up for me? So they killed. Oh no, it's Bill. He's dead now. But now Karen has been wounded. So she's been bit. So now she's got the disease or whatever.
Shake the disease.
Shake the disease. So her big plan is, what we don't realize, is she's like, I'm going to go on the news and I'm going to transform on the air. And then, Chris, you're going to shoot me with the silver bullets so that I can kind of reveal that there are werewolves among us, kind of thing. So it goes across.
Why did they just drop a cage on it? Why did they have to blow her head off on national TV?
Well, because she doesn't want to live that way. That's what it is. Because that's the thing. It's like, it seems to me that when these guys turn into werewolves, they're totally in control.
Yes.
It just kind of changes their desires to a certain degree. They become more animalistic. Like Chris, after becoming the werewolf, is now eating ribs. He's like,
eating ribs and trying to kill his wife now all of a sudden.
I mean, that's the thing. Is it's like, so why is he now trying to murder her?
Yeah.
It's hard to say. They had their problems, but I don't think they'd reach that level.
Yeah, it wasn't quite there.
Wasn't it to that degree? So she transforms across the 8 o'clock news. Smash cuts to all the people watching at home. Hey, the news lady just became a werewolf kind of thing. Chris shoots her on national TV with the silver bolts. That's the end of her. Smash cut to there. It's like a bar. A bunch of truckers are like having beers. I think it was all done with special effects.
Oh, God.
Hey, can I buy you a hamburger, my dear? And it cuts to, it's the gypsy woman. She's like, yes, I'll take mine rare. Boom, boom, boom. So
and the whole end of the movie is just a poorly made burger close up for the whole credits.
That's exactly. Now, my question to you is, now that we've discussed the entire movie.
Yes.
Why did the doctor invite her up to the colony?
Sense. Because that blows the whole situation. It blows their whole cover.
Right.
Well, that's a huge issue I had. It made no sense.
It made no sense. I mean, now let me think about this. Is he afraid that if she remembers, she will remember him becoming a werewolf?
And how that still doesn't, how will that reflect back on them? No way.
I get that. Okay. I mean, but that's my question.
He could have it turned into a leprechaun and done a jig, and it's still how would it ever? The leprechaun tells me to birthday. How would it ever reflect back onto Dr. Phil?
Right. This is a good question that we may never know the answer to.
Because there is no answer because nobody gave a crap enough to make this script make sense.
Well, but here's my next question. Once she's up there, they are literally just giving her therapy.
Yes.
They aren't trying to murder her. In fact, they're just literally just doing what they claim to do. The only difference is
they're all werewolves.
They happen to be werewolves, and the gypsy woman is into her husband. That's where things go awry, evidently.
Yeah.
Basically.
One, they never should have invited her. That was so stupid.
Right.
And two, the gypsy woman's obviously a loose cannon. She's the one who set all the bad into motion.
That is exactly right. I mean, because theoretically, if the gypsy woman doesn't make a move on her husband, they spend their 2 weeks there and they just go home, and that's the end of the story?
All right.
They hear some howlings, and then they go, okay, I guess we're going home.
This movie made me think. Quite frankly, it would have been a better movie if it was about werewolves trying to mainstream. But you know what that is? That's True Blood.
Yeah,
True Blood is basically this, where once they came up with the supplement of the blood, the vampires were able to mainstream, but there was that whole subgroup that didn't want to do it that way. They didn't want to eat the cows.
Right.
They didn't want the True Blood. They wanted to go back to the days when they were, the emperors of the night and were taking what they wanted to take and wanted to be more natural.
Yep. There's a lot of questions in this movie.
Do you think True Blood just lifted everything from this? Or are there other movies like this where you're trying to mainstream whatever freakish thing you are?
Well, what's interesting is that all this stuff, all this new age kind of psychology that they reference, like primal scream therapy and Scientology.
This movie might as well have been made in the 70s. 81, that's still the 70s.
You're right. Well, none of that was in the book. None of that was in the book. Let me go through some things before we jump into
just my continued criticism. Go ahead.
How dare you? This is very upsetting. Now, in the book, the basic plot is similar. Karen is attacked and actually raped by a guy named Max Quist, who's not a werewolf. He's just a rapist.
Okay.
She is upset. So she's very upset. So her and her husband go up to a town up the coast. I think it was called like Drago or something, just to kind of get away from it all. And that city happens to be a haven for werewolves. And that's when, it all goes down.
Oh, like the Lost Boys, where it just happens to be a town full of vampires.
That's correct. All of that new age psychology stuff about the id and all that stuff was added by the screenwriter, who coincidentally plays the morgue attendant.
Oh, I thought you were going to tell me he was a Scientologist.
And he was also a Scientologist. Shockingly enough. Let's
Scientologist in Hollywood? Who'd have thunk it?
Shocking. Let's just jump right into the behind the scenes. Are you ready? I've got a truck ton of behind the scenes.
I've been behind the scenes for like 6 years. Let's go.
Let's do it. Okay. Number one, we said Dee Wallace. She was actually a scream queen in her own right, because she was in The Hills Have Eyes. She was in Cujo.
They couldn't make a movie back in the day with unless Dee Wallace was in it.
Pretty much. Interestingly enough, she was cast in this role, and they were having a hard time casting her husband. So she sent her fiancé, recommended him for the role, but claiming she only kind of knew him as an actor. Not that he was with her in any way. It wasn't until they cast him that she accidentally spilled the beans. Oh yeah, that's my fiancé, soon to be husband. He actually played opposite her in Cujo as well. I guess she's the
lesser Stephen King movie, lesser Stephen King book. Yawn.
Well, he was basically the Tom Arnold of his day, where it's just like she gets cast, she throws a bone. So the guy who plays Chris, his name is Dennis Dugan. He actually went on to become like a comedy director in the 90s. Like he directed like Happy Gilmore and a bunch of other kind of comedy movies from that period. This movie was directed by Joe Dante, and this was like one of his first big, if you want to call it that, Hollywood things. He had done Piranha about 3 years earlier.
But he hadn't done Gremlins yet.
He got Gremlins because of The Howling.
Oh, my Lord.
Yes. And if you notice, it's like, if you've seen a number of his movies, you'll see a lot of the same actors popping up over and over again.
I did notice that when I was looking people up.
Roger Corman, the famous horror producer from like the 60s, 70s, and today, frankly. He has a bizarro cameo. Earlier in the movie, when Dee Wallace is talking on the phone to Eddie before she meets him in the adult theater, the guy waiting for the phone is Roger Corman.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So that's like Rosemary's Baby.
It
where
is.
Rosemary was in the... and that was... Mother Trucker. No, William Castle.
Yep.
William Castle was outside of the phone booth in that.
That's exactly right. Very good.
Boom.
Boom
I
goes
can
the
remember
dynamite.
things.
Now, Eddie Quist, the serial killer werewolf, was played by an actor named Robert Picardo, who more recently you would know him from Star Trek.
Everybody, do we notice that, like, last three movies, they all have some weird Star Trek reference?
Well,
somebody was in Star Trek.
He wasn't just on one episode. He played the medical hologram.
I totally know.
Yeah.
I totally know. But you don't recognize him because he's so much younger here.
So much younger. He was wearing a crazy wig that made him look like Chewbacca. He jokingly talked about how he had literally just come from Yale drama. He was on Broadway twice.
And this is Shakespearean actor for sure.
This is his first Hollywood movie, and he had to sit in a chair for 6 hours, turning into a werewolf, and he was lamenting it. And finally, somebody said, "Hey, next time, read the script all the way through." That was the advice. Ba-dum, boom. Kevin McCarthy.
And we don't mean Trump's bootlicker.
We do not mean Trump's bootlicker. The actor who was also in Invasion of the Body Snatchers back in the 50s.
Invasion of the Body Snatchers, yep.
He plays like the station manager, the boss. He's like in a couple scenes of Karen and the rest of the gang. Like I said, Slim Pickens plays the sheriff. John Carradine plays the old grizzly werewolf man at the
and Slim Pickens is such a great name.
It is a good
it's right
name.
up there with Catman Struthers, fantastic.
Okay, there's no Catman Struthers, first of all. Scatman Crothers is the name you're looking for, but thank you very much.
I am having a mom brain.
You're having something. I love this movie. If you pay close attention, the music is very reminiscent of those old horror movies from like the 30s. It's a lot of organs and things like that. Like it's the Phantom of the Opera. A lot of crucial moments. If you happen to watch it again, which I don't think you will, you'll notice these kind of.
I may not. It may not be on that list of movies you'll always watch when they're on TV. This may not have made the list.
This is on your list. There was also, because it's Joe Dante. Joe Dante kind of likes to mix horror with kind of a comedy undertone to a lot of the things.
What was the comedy? Tell me what the comedy was. There was everybody. And everybody's hand either said wolf or howl in every scene.
Yes.
It was overdone.
They were eating wolf chili. The book on the desk is Howl.
It was everywhere.
Bill was reading a book by Thomas Wolfe.
Yes.
There was a framed photograph of Lon Chaney Jr. in the doctor's office. They beat you over like they're watching cartoons of the Big Bad
Wolf.
There's a wolf.
Yeah.
Wolfman Jack. There's all sorts of stuff.
Subtle. I was like, what? I started writing it down, and then I just said, I don't care anymore.
It is all over the map.
I have a wild card thing for you.
Throw it in there.
The screenwriter.
Yes.
John
Sayles. Yes.
Academy Award winning screenwriter, plus the writer and director of my most favorite movie in the whole wide world. And do you know what that is?
The Howling.
Shut your mouth, boy.
Piranha.
It is not. The Secret of Rowan Inish.
There you go.
How could that man write and direct that movie? And he won an Academy Award, I believe, for Passion Fish, but was somehow involved in this pile of steaming garbage.
Now you've gone a bridge too far.
It's not that bad, but I mean,
how dare you?
Compared to The Secret of Rowan Inish, which is one of the best movies in the whole wide world.
I think you're out of your GD mind. Let me just say that.
The Secret of Rowan Inish.
How many times has my mom called me the dark-haired creature that came out of the water? And yeah, I know all about it. If you're Irish, even remotely, you're vaguely familiar with The Secret of Rowan Inish. So good times. Yes.
Oh my God.
And again, he's the morgue attendant. He was the morgue attendant, his most triumphant role. No, it was Joe Dante's thing where it was like he would always try to, if the screenwriter, he'd try to throw them like a little bit part so they would be on set in case there were like rewrites that they had to do. They would be there. There's a lot of good stuff in this. Let me do this. So there's that climactic scene where Terry is talking to her husband on the phone, looking at the files. And you see the wolf hand take the files out of her hand, right?
Yes.
Very surprising from the audience, except literally she would have been looking right at the werewolf the entire time.
Yeah, that made no sense. Well,
do you understand what I'm saying?
I said, there's a few things that make no sense. Maybe it's like standing in front of a window. We pranked, when I was in high school, let me tell you this tale. We went over to scare the girls in the other dorm. So we put on makeup like we were men, and we'd already told them, look out for the Eloy boys. They sneak onto the campus and they want to get into the dorms. Watch out for the Eloy boys. So we dress up as men.
Wait a minute, the Eloys? Like the Morlocks and the... What?
Eloy is the town, the closest town.
I thought you were talking about the time machine.
Eloy, Arizona. So we were literally standing in front of these open windows, and people would walk by. They would look out. They didn't see us. So maybe it's like that. It wasn't until we started banging on the glass that everyone started screaming and freaking out. But literally, we were just standing, looking in, and nobody noticed us.
Well, it's one of those things where they, in kind of less good movies, where the plot twists and the way that things are shot are meant to trick the audience, where the people actually living it doesn't make any sense at all. You know what I'm saying?
So this is one of those situations?
This is clearly one of those situations.
Maybe she's so short that she couldn't see over the file cabinet.
That could be it. Maybe that's the explanation.
She just saw hairy feet and thought they were decorative.
Pretty much. Now, pretty much all the characters in this movie are named after horror directors from the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Look it up. George Wagner.
I didn't even pick that up.
R. William Neal, Terrence Fisher, Fred Francis. Look it up. Look it up, for God's sake.
I don't know any of those names. You could have just made that shit up right now.
Well, do you want me to run it down for you?
Who's the Wagner? I don't know these people.
Okay. Let's see. We know that I told you that Lon Chaney Jr. played the werewolf in a bunch of different movies.
You didn't say that. You said somebody Wagner.
Give me a GD. Give me a GD second to pull it up. For God's sakes, should say it here. Maybe I won't. Yeah. All it says is that you can look it up. George Wagner, Roy William Neal, Terrence Fisher, Freddie Francis. They do? Earl Kenton, Sam Newfield, Charles Benton, Jerry Warren, Lou Landers.
But not what they directed.
Pretty much. Yeah, I'm not going to look through this much longer. You can look it up. Google it.
Give me one name. Give me one name.
George Wagner.
You can keep talking while
I shall. This movie came out about the same time when there was like an early to mid 80s kind of werewolf explosion. Yeah.
He directed Lon Chaney Jr. in The Wolfman.
See, there you go.
There you go.
They were all, you can all look it up. I'm not going to, but
that's enough. It's enough.
In the early to mid 80s, you had Wolfen, Teen Wolf, Howling, Howling 2, Full Moon High, Teen Wolf 2, The Company of Wolves, Howling 3, Silver Bullet, and American Werewolf in London, all within like 5 years of each other. Very strange. Now,
question.
Please.
What is it about the 80s that spurred all of these werewolf movies? Wait, roll it back. Wasn't there a bunch of vampire movies in the late 70s?
What did you have? You had Dracula with Frank Langella.
Yeah.
Salem's Lot was a made-for-TV movie. What else?
Maybe this is all part of the arc. We ran through. When did The Hunger came out? No, that was later.
Yeah, it was like 4 years later.
I guess it's all part of a wave. These things come and then they disappear and then they make a resurgence. Maybe it's generational. I don't know.
Could be. Now, this movie has a connection to An American Werewolf in London, which came out the same year. Originally, Rick Baker was going to do the effects for The Howling, but after doing a few things, he switched over to American Werewolf in London. And his assistant, Rob Bottin, did the effects for The Howling. Rob Bottin also did effects for another one of your favorite special effects movies, The Thing.
Oh, Jesus.
So there you have it.
That sounds about right. Because with these special effects, less is more.
Just don't show us.
From my memory, they only had one big transformation in American Werewolf.
Yes.
And then the rest, it was this one you had to sit and watch everybody stretch. It's all the same thing. American Werewolf and this with the jaw that comes out and drool and cracking bones and everything.
Why not? What's wrong with that?
Less is more. Less is more. Like I said, while they're clearly snapping and yelling because their body's transforming, walk out the effing door and lock it behind you.
You don't just sit and stare at them? Is that what you're trying to
say? That's part of the matter. They're mesmerized. So they just lay there while you transform and then rip their throats out.
Well, you gotta remember, when Karen walks in there, she's oblivious to this whole werewolf subplot. Basically, she's just like, "What is happening?"
But when you see one, if a guy walks up to me and his forehead has like balloons that start vibrating, I get the hell out. I want to see what happens next.
I don't want to be rude. Maybe he just has a medical condition.
That's right. Well, I'm not a doctor, so I'm gonna lock you in this room until the CDC arrives.
That seems rude.
You got the coronavirus. You got the Ebola. I don't know.
He's definitely had the Ebola. It's very upsetting. Any last thoughts or feelings before we move on with our lives?
Oh my God, no! I didn't really write too many notes on this. That was it.
I enjoyed this movie. That's all I'm going to say on the subject. I find it. Now, I'm not going to lie. There's definitely a lot of my movie choices. There's a little bit of like early '80s nostalgia.
Yes, it's little baby Kevin.
Yeah,
remembering the good old days.
Remembering the good old days. What's wrong with that? Good Lord. So there you have it. Good times had by all. Go to our page on Facebook at The Podcast That Wouldn't Die. Go to our page on Twitter at TPodcastTWDie. Go to you can email us at. Are you yawning in the middle of the show? That inspires confidence. Email us at thepodcastthatwouldn'tdie@gmail. And then share, subscribe, rate. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, etc., etc. And Erin, of course, has her own personal Twitter account.
the cult of Aaron. Send me a message and I'll read it on the air. And your homework is to go find 5 friends, take their phones, go to Apple Podcasts and give us 5 stars.
Yes, and you can listen to this on your Alexa apps at your house. Okay, the Alexa just blinked at me.
See?
Yeah. If you say...
Okay, right now, yell at your Alexa while we're on the air and say, play the podcast that wouldn't die.
Alexa, play the Apple podcast, the podcast that wouldn't die. It just shut off. Take my words for it. It will work. It will work. Oh, thanks for your help, Alexa. Thanks for nothing.
Thanks for nothing.
Okay, Alexa's got hog wild now.
Now you're just having a full conversation with Alexa. You know, I thought I could change the voice like with my Siri, but it made me sad to learn I could not. And I wanted to change the name, and it won't let you do that either.
You can, though. There's a new feature where you could go into your Amazon account and change the voice to Samuel L. Jackson.
For a fee.
For a fee.
A monthly subscription or something.
It's worth it.
No.
It is worth it.
It's enough. I got to play for Sirius Radio for my car. I got Audibles. I got the Shudder subscription, which does me no good because any of the movies we review, I've got to pay full price on crazy Amazon.
That's very upsetting.
I have too many subscriptions in my life.
That is true. So, thank you for joining us, and be well.
Be well.